WSOU 89.5 FM, the loudest rock. I'm Valentino, and I'm joined today with Aaron from Of Mice and Men. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the Of Mice and Men camp right now. New album, Echo, out December 3rd, this Friday. How you feeling?
Good. It is essentially what caps off an entire year's worth of releasing music and creating stuff for our fans and just sort of keeping that dialogue going. So it feels good. It also is interesting because it's the first time where we've released an album and fans have the tracks already for the most part. There's one final song coming, and then basically the entire album will have been released over the course of essentially 12 months.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get your opinion on this because obviously we interviewed Valentino back in January when you guys had first announced that you were going to do this. Talking with you now, it's almost done. Having the rollout have be completed exactly the way it was intended. How do you feel kind of looking back on that process?
Um, it's very rewarding. I think it's very validating that it's connected with our fans the way it has. It was a lot more work, I think, than any of us anticipated.
That's true because it's not just one big album rollout process. It's like three mini album rollout processes.
It's exactly that. But it's good because in a way it sort of allowed us to push our creativity within these tiny little microcosms of projects. And I think what we ended up coming out with was something that's very special, and we're all very proud of it.
Absolutely. And I know I speak for a lot of fans. This is the first time that a release like this has been done, like the EPs, then boom, the whole record's kind of out, but not really out yet. And what I think is super interesting about this is you would think, oh, there's, one or two songs, there's no surprise. But I kind of like that because we've had music throughout the year. And then like even just listening through the record in full, I was like, I know all these songs, I know all the lyrics. The album hasn't come out yet, and I know all the lyrics, which is just kind of a cool feeling.
Yeah, to me, it's sort of like, rewatching one of your favorite TV shows where you watch the season all year. And now that the entire thing is out and you've got the box set, you can sort of go back and revisit it because music is very multifaceted. And even for us being the creators of it, there's still things that I'm discovering in our music or in the message or, deeper themes and threads that sort of make themselves more known as the album is released and you're able to sort of look at it from the top down. But yeah, no, it was awesome releasing music all year. It gave us something to look forward to, and we felt like, it gave our fans something to look forward to in a time period where there really wasn't a lot to look forward to.
Exactly. And what's interesting to hear you say that is it gave the fans a lot to look forward to. There was never no one ever wasn't talking about Of Mice and Men in 2021, because by the time they were still hyping about the Bloom EP, boom, the album announcement was already on its way. So it's kind of crazy to see something like that.
Yeah, and it feels good. I've said it a bunch, and it never really gets easier to convey. But I'm not somebody that's very good at concisely speaking my thoughts and feelings and things like that. Music is sort of my way of most efficiently trying to communicate and connect with the outside world, and to have been able to share music episodically, it means that whatever the songs are about, whatever emotions that we're pouring into those and then sharing with our fans, like whatever human experience we're living and then writing about and sharing, it's still very real and relevant to us at the time. And it's still, relevant to us when our fans are sort of getting it and digesting it. And for some people out there to say that it's relevant to them too, or that they can sort of, feel more seen or more heard through that. It's something that was definitely reciprocated to us. And it was, it's an awesome experience. And at the same time, it's so, it feels so back to basics. You know what I mean? It feels so like if we were a band that hadn't been signed and this was our first shot at making music, we probably would have done it very much the same way. It was just a very sort of honest attempt to try and communicate what we were going through at the time and just release smaller projects, And at the same time, we did it over Zoom and we did it over Twitch. So people who wanted to sort of peek behind the curtain a little bit could join us for that ride.
that's really cool to see fans kind of get a perspective on how these songs are written, how you guys, your songwriting creative process. Was it tricky to kind of do this over Zoom? Because I know that like, if you're in the studio, it's just like, oh, yeah, it's a little too loud, put that down. Whereas over Zoom, it's like an email back and forth, and that, oh no, that one, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of lag. There's definitely um, some barriers that technology puts up. But I mean, if we were having this conversation 3 or 4 years ago, Zoom and Dropbox and things weren't even necessarily as developed as they are now to have been able to have done that. So it's sort of an amalgamation of right place, right time, right gear, right mindset, and all of those things. And at the same time, having those sessions 3 times a week or 4 times a week, or some days, some weeks we just did it like 5, 6 days in a row, just would get together and write music. It gave us something to look forward to, because we already live somewhat far from each other. Everyone could essentially drive within a 2-hour radius to a studio or something. But when the pandemic even before the pandemic had closed it down, we were already kind of working on pre-production and doing things over Zoom. So that sort of, in reality, the lockdowns really just it just kind of made the decision for us. Like, okay, this is how you're going to pursue this. But, and I also think the older you get, the more it just doesn't want to work for you.
Yeah.
I used to be very computer savvy, and I still am computer savvy, but yeah, things like Zoom, it's of all things, routing the audio is the hardest. But no, it's fantastic. I'm just I can't believe we're here and it's almost out, and feels like a blur. And at the same time, it feels like it was a lot of work. So yeah, I'm just rambling.
Absolutely. No, but that's super cool. And especially hearing you say like the collaborative process was the same, because I've talked to bands in the pandemic where they kind of are like frustrated, where they're like, when we're in the studio, it's really easy to write music, but over Zoom, the collaborative process is harder. And it's really refreshing to hear you say it's the same thing. It's just over a computer.
Yeah, and the way that we would work is everybody would sort of write songs and come with anything from skeletons and riffs to, damn near complete songs. And we would throw those in a Dropbox for whatever we're working on. And, we've worked together for so long now that everybody just has not only like the palette for everybody else's flavor, but the appreciation of it. And so the fact that everybody could sort of bring songs to the table and they would excite everybody else. And we would, I've said it's sort of akin to coloring a coloring book with 3 of your friends, where you've got, markers, and you're going to pick a little square and you're going to color it. And if you want to paint the sky red, then yeah, the sky's red and I'm stoked on it. Let's figure out what color the grass is now. And I think having that, very sort of back to basics, back in the garage mentality of just, let's chase what excites us, because that's sort of the truest barometer that you're expressing yourself from a really honest place. It just lent itself to creating material that we feel like we connect with, and our fans connect with on an entirely different level.
And I think that might be part of the reason why Of Mice and Men has like such a sturdy catalog, a consistent catalog. I feel like there's never been a record that's like, tanked or like been really, all the music is very, very consistently good, consistently genuine to what you guys are doing and, who you're about. And I think that probably the case for that is, as you just said, it's such a team effort. Someone will put a thing in the Dropbox and everyone will go, great, that's awesome. How do we expand on that? It's that's just super really awesome to see.
Yeah, and one thing that we always try and refocus our perspective on is why? Like, why write songs? Why try and communicate that way? And I think we focus so hard on why we do what we do, that sometimes the what even becomes secondary, and we end up coming up with songs or soundscapes, or there's a lot of like sound design elements, and a lot of songs from this album essentially, they started with like samplers and things that we wouldn't even typically use, but certain sounds resonate with certain feelings that you have that you really kind of want to get out. And yeah, I don't know. It was just it was a great process, and I appreciate the kind words about the back catalog. You know, it's hard for us a lot of times to talk about the difference. You know, and that's always a question that pops up in almost every pre-album interview. You know, is how does this record differ from the last one? And it's well, it was inspired by different things, but I think the intent for us is always just very, very set in stone. It's that we're just human beings that just desperately seek connection like other human beings, and the way that we can speak three-dimensionally or four-dimensionally, if you will, is through music. You know, to me music has always, I feel like I've been able to more accurately convey my thoughts and feelings through music than just thinking through things or talking through things, you know. And I think the ultimate goal of music is to connect with people and to connect people with people, because long before I ever made music, music did that for me, you know.
Exactly. And you know, there's like actual scientific studies out there that like the way music affects your brain chemistry, where if you're happy and you hear a really sad song, you're going to get sad. And so even just like hearing you describe it, like when I write music, it's the most genuine way to express my emotions. It's the most genuine way of, you know, feeling emotions too as a fan, you know, on the receiving end. You know, it actually gets inside of our brain chemistry in ways that we don't quite understand yet, but that's part of the magic of it.
100%. And I think the ultimate rewarding byproduct is for somebody to say that they feel seen and heard. You know, a lot of times when you're going through really complex emotions, you know, be it grief, a lot of this record deals with grief, you know. And I think when you're going through complex emotions, and everything feels so foreign and sort of hard to understand, but you can hear something that's almost like speaking your perfect language going hello, and you can just kind of turn around and you're like, oh my god, somebody is speaking sort of the same language that I am, you know. Music is the universal language. That's the literal age-old cliche, and we use language to communicate, you know. And I think it was you know, even going back to your question before, it was great to be able to connect with people on Twitch and sort of have those moments, because we did sort of miss out on that communication and that very real connection that you get as a band, where you're literally face to face with people who have allowed what you created to mean something to them. And it's a very, very like, it's a very, very real and like intimate thing that I think a lot of people were missing out on for the last, you know, now I guess it's been almost 2 years, but I think things like Twitch allow you to sort of have some of those moments, you know.
Exactly. And, you know, on that topic of fan connections, of Mice and Men's last show was February 2020, Shipwrecked, or Shipwrecked Festival. And it's been a long time since you guys have played live. I know fans are really hungry for that live connection. Are there any US tours in the works? Anything just hype up this new record where we can hear these songs live?
I wish I had dates to tell you, but I don't, and we are working on it, and I yeah, no, there's nothing yet. But we really want to get back out there, you know, and we want to do it in a way that's safe for our fans so that people can enjoy it, you know, because there is no sense. I don't know that if it's still a super hyper stressful thing that people would get sort of the same release, you know, you go to a show to not stress. Um, yeah, so it's hard to say what the future holds. For now, we're just working on even more new music, and we do that anyway. I mean, that's probably one of our worst or best habits, is that we we finish something and we're immediately on to the next thing, and that's what's exciting, you know. Because you just never you never truly know. The reason why I love doing what I do is because at any given point, any one of the other musicians in my band, who are some of the most like talented people I've ever met, two of them are going to do something that are two independent ideas that all of a sudden come together and become greater than the sum of their parts, and it's going to excite everybody. And that moment where everybody sort of realizes, whoa, like I live for those, you know.
Exactly. And you know, I feel like that's the mentality. Just that you need to have in the music industry. Because I love the music industry, but with the music industry, you could like put out like a 20 song album, like every song 10 minutes each, and then you'll sit down for an interview and the first question will be, what's next? So you got to kind of love the chaos of it.
Yeah, and it's always a good feeling to, and maybe it's delusion, but it's a good feeling to feel like the best is yet to come. I feel like the new material we're working on now is even better than the album. And I think the album is better than the last album. And I've felt that way since the first album that I was a part of this band with. I've felt that way on everything that I've done, because it's, you learn a little bit along the way, and maybe you don't grow, but you certainly sort of refine, what you do. And I look forward to that process every record. I look forward to that challenge.
Definitely, and that's such a cool way to look at it. And kind of going off of that, there's something I definitely wanted to talk to you about. Obviously, you've been the front man for 3 records now. And in my humble opinion, I think that this is the best you've sounded vocally in the entire career. I think that this record, the first time I heard like Fighting Gravity, Mosaic, and like Bloom, I was like shocked. I was like, this is so cool. What do you do as like a vocalist to like, push yourself forward every cycle?
First off, thank you. That's like one of the kindest things anyone's ever said to me. I a lot of what I try and do, and I'm not even kidding, is I just try and not ruin the song. so much of ourselves and our emotions go into just the music creation side of it, of just creating instrumentals that can speak for themselves. I think that's something that we always focus on, is making sure our music, just in and of itself, it has the emotional quality that we are trying to convey. And then I try not to get in the way of it. I try and just think about how the song relates to how we're all feeling, and how we're feeling relates to other people, and how we all sort of relate to the same, core human experience. And it, I think this record, I definitely, because we self-produced it and I did the mixing mastering, there was really nobody else whose time I would be wasting, like adding harmony stacks on top of each other for, a couple hours. But that ended up becoming Bloom. That was the foundation of that song, is all those different harmony stacks. And, I think, knowing in the back of my mind that we weren't going to be jumping from the studio to the road and trying to write a record that would translate to a live setting, while also sort of handling the mixing and mastering duties, there wasn't really tons of pressure to stick to something that I can just perform live or perform in the studio, because I've said it a bunch. I love working with producers. I have zero problem with it. In fact, I've learned valuable things every single time we've worked with producers. But it's a very different mindset, when you know that somebody's job is to make sure that the record is assembled. That's the producer's job, right? Your job then is to give them the pieces of the best of your abilities and the best quality, and then get out of their way so they can make sure that the record gets assembled, And I think I don't know that I would have necessarily been as adventurous, especially with things like the vocal layers. But, even things like that sort of are meant to kind of complement the story in their own sort of cryptic ways, I guess.
Yeah, and like you're right in the sense that if there's a producer, you might be a little bit more hesitant to like try something for the 50th time. Like you're,
Yeah.
be like, all right, I've done this 8 different ways. We're gonna try it 8 more. Whereas when it's just you producing this record, it's more of like, okay, well, I want to do this. I want to get this to the best possible extent that it can get.
100%. It's when you're in the studio working with a producer with material that's already been, in pre-production or whatnot. Your job is to go and perform and execute, But with this record, we were sort of writing and recording at the same time. It was sort of a simultaneous process where what started off as demos, literally over pre-production and re-recording guitar parts and redoing things, all within sort of the same project file even, the songs went from initial first versions to completed versions. And it was sort of, maybe it was like working, it's more like working with a graphite pencil than working with a pen. You have an eraser, and you also have the ability to sort of lightly sketch things that you can then go back over.
Oh, absolutely. And switching gears a bit, going into something else that I definitely want to talk to you about. This is super cool. Just like from the perspective of the fan, and I'm sure from your perspective, this is your first album that you've signed with Sharptone with,
Yeah.
and I get that's got to be really scary because as a band, 6 records, your entire career has been with Rise Records. You know, everything you've known as an artist has been with the same label, and now totally new territory. You know, even as a very big metal band like you guys are, that's still kind of scary territory to go through, I'm sure.
Um, it is and it isn't. I think, for us, you get to a certain point where, especially after 6 albums and God knows how many shows, you get to a point where it almost becomes exciting. The chaos of the unknown is perfect territory to create within. But no, we were always super excited about Sharptone's artists because I think that they are the premier label in metalcore, and the future of the genre can be found on their roster. And that was a big reason why we wanted to sign, was because we liked so many of the young bands that they're signing that are really pushing the genre forward. I'm just grateful to still be here after all these years. But I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that we are the ones pushing the genre into the future. That's the young artists always. And not only that, but we've wanted to do this concept of releasing an album over the form of EPs since before Defy. Um, it was something that we'd talked about even, I think, around the Cold World time. So it was something that we'd, discussed, but were never able to do. We love Rise. We love the people. There's zero anything there other than, we signed an album deal, and then we signed another album deal, and it was for 6 records total. And then, Earth and Sky was our 6th. But Sharptone was not just okay with the idea of trying something else, and with this release, because it's definitely not the status quo, I don't think. But they were excited about it. They were like, hell yeah, let's go, and we're like, all right, let's go. Let's see how this whole thing shakes loose, and it ended up being such an awesome process because they are just amazing people that really love music and love what it does for people, so it was I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. I'm very happy with what we're doing right now.
And I talked to Henry from Boston Manor a few days ago, and they just signed to Sharptones as well. And one of the things that he kind of said was as cool as Sharptone has like heavy death metal. They have metalcore. They also have like pop punk. Like they kind of have like really just everything. So it's going to be cool to like again be on a label with like a ton of different influences, which is just awesome.
100%. And they understand that the scene is not just a place to sell records. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's important to people, and it sticks with us. There's people there's people older than me. There's lifers in this. So it's yeah, they're great, and yeah, it was really awesome doing this with them.
Absolutely. So I know you mentioned earlier in the interview that you guys are still working on new music currently, even with the release of the record out tomorrow. There's still stuff in the works. Tell me a little bit about do we know if that release is also going to be structured in that like EP release, or is it going to be the traditional album release? What can we expect from that?
So as of right now, I was literally working on it right before the Zoom, like in between Zoom calls. Right now, it is basically what could sort of be played as one 17-minute long song, but it's essentially in 3 different parts, like you would hear in orchestral music, like 3 movements. And it's very futuristic, sort of Blade Runner, cyberpunky kind of sounding and feeling. while being very heavy at the same time. It's very cool. Yeah, and so I have no idea what we'll do with that, but it exists right now, and so I'm kind of working on, lyrics and vocals and whatnot, but who knows? I mean, we might still do that. We might just wait and drop a surprise album. I don't know. I think if anything, I would hope that the success of this allows us just a little bit, even not to be like one of those give an inch, take a mile kind of people, but like this gives us just a little bit wider berth with like different creative releases or whatnot that we want to do. We are actually in the process of working on something that will not, I don't want to give any sort of time frame because I'm also not 100% sure about it, but it is basically, complementary to the album, and it will drop at some point.
All right. I know we're super
That's so
excited
cryptic.
to.
I basically could have just told you nothing at that point.
There's something coming. We don't know what it is or what's happening, but it's coming, and I'm here for it.
It's coming. I don't want to. I don't know. I don't know if I'm not supposed to say something or not.
That's okay.
There's so much going on all the time, and we definitely like working. We have a lot of spinning plates at all times, and it's just sometimes you just got to keep them spinning, and you're just not really thinking about it. No, but there's a. I'll just say it. There's a remix album that we're working on. That's essentially a remix of all the songs.
Oh, all right. That's super cool.
You heard it here first.
Heard it here first. WSOU 89.5. That's super cool because it's like, yes, fans have just heard these new songs. They're loving it. And some of these songs they've heard for a little bit now since, earlier in the year. And then there's just a new take on it,
Yep. And that is in the works.
Good stuff.
And that's a super cool and super collaborative process, which means that's like that's like a pretentious way of saying like there's just tons of email threads going on.
Tons of people all trying to get in. I love that.
But it's awesome. It's that was one of the highlights of doing these EPs is every single go we got to work with Derek Hess doing the album artwork. And he's somebody who we've looked up to. He was designing tour posters for some of my favorite bands when I was in high school, and even before that. I remember a Deftones tour poster I think he did in like 2002 or something. And we got to work on essentially album art for each release. And then we worked with a director named Frankie Nasso and his team and brought basically like the Derek Hess art. His team hand drew these music videos. So the music videos for the entire campaign are basically hand-drawn animated music videos. It was such a cool process to just work with so many creative people in a time where it's probably arguably the most important time to be creative,
Oh, absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you, again, a personal take of mine. The album cover for Echo is one of the best album covers I've seen in like the last decade. And it's cool because it's like, and like even recently, I've just been stunned by like the visuals of bands, like in the course of like 2 weeks, we had the EP from Knocked Loose and like they had that like visual animated stuff. And that was incredible. Like one of the most unique things I've seen. And then like right after Of Mice and Men drops like their album cover, and it's just so awesome. So I feel like this might just be me talking, but there's a lot of cool visual stuff happening with bands that I'm absolutely in love with.
So much so. I think that art and the music comes from that same place, and yeah, his name's Derek Hess, and yeah, if that album cover moved you and that was like the entire point, then you should check out the rest of his stuff because he is one of the most phenomenal artists. Like working with him was such a pleasure. We just actually, I think it came out yesterday in Revolver or on Revolver's website, a whole piece about the album artwork, all of the different EPs, how it all came together. And honestly, how it was, all of this was such a huge exercise in well-being and mental health, and how it's like, and how creating is super important to that.
And even like I read the piece on Revolver, and what's so cool is like the symbolism of the bird, like you both go really into depth about that. So all of our WSU listeners, if you're hearing this, definitely check that out on revolver.com. One more thing, like my last kind of like question / point, that 17-minute song, I am so curious to know where that's going to go. Because like you could do like the Between the Buried and Me route where it's like you chop it up and like, yeah, it's different songs, but it sounds like one cohesive song. Or it could be just like a 17-minute track of Mice and Men. Like
Oh, it'll
that's
probably
so cool.
it'll have to be cut up. It'll have to be cut up for me because I will just at some point want to hear the part that's in one of them and not have to listen to the whole thing. Purely
Yeah.
just for me and my own selfishness. It'll be cut up in three in three parts. I can almost guarantee it. But I don't like saying always and I don't like saying never, so who knows?
Perfect. And even just performing that live, like 17 minutes, no drinking water for your vocal cords, no break, just
We
17
did it
minutes go.
we did it once where we played You Dig, Still You Diggin', and Forever You Diggin', which is from the self-titled, The Flood, and then Defy. And we made like a medley. We were like, hey, how cool would that be to make a medley? When we played it live, people really didn't know the first two, and they only kind of knew the third because we'd just put out Defy. Um, and yeah, it was like 12 minutes long. And I remember every set being like, God, this was such a good idea. um, but it actually was really fun. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's who knows where it'll go. But that's sort of the just joy of creating, At least now we know that if we feel so inclined to finish these and be so excited that we want to put them out and share them that we can, and that the label will allow that, because that was one of, I think, the most fun parts about being an unsigned band. Long before I ever had any sort of music career, the most fun thing to do would be to write a song and just be so stoked on it and just upload it to MySpace, and it's immediately there and people can hear it and they can either be stoked or tell you that you suck, but just like just being so excited about it. And it's I think it's a testament to the process that I think I'm still excited about it, even though it's just one more song coming tomorrow. And it's a Crosby, Stills and Nash cover. But yeah.
Yeah. And like, especially with the music industry, to write a song, and even in non-pandemic times, even before COVID was even a blip in our minds, you still have to wait like 6 months before you put that out.
Oh,
Whereas during the pandemic, some artists have had to like wait 3 years, which is insane to me, to write a song, and then when it finally comes out, you're 3 years removed from where you were when you wrote that. Like that's sad in a way. That it's really heartbreaking.
it is. And it also I think it for artists in particular, it's really easy to sort of feel disconnected when that's happening, If you're not somebody that can just sit and openly communicate with the world and whatnot. It's a big thing to be able to have those conversations where you can share something you've made and get feedback for it. It's I don't know. It's rejuvenating. It's rejuvenating. Oh, I said that.
I love it. Absolutely.
Invigorating.
It's amazing. You're gonna
It
love
is.
it.
It is. It is.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much again for talking with me today. If you want to hear the new album Echo, comes out tomorrow, it'll be on all streaming services. You can tune into WSOU 89.5 FM to hear pretty much all the songs. We got them all playing. And yeah, keep it locked for that reimagined cover or reimagined album of Echo. It's going to be good. Thank you again for joining us.
Valentino, thank you so much for having me and for just playing the record and for bringing music to people.